we've asked Rabbi Green to give a very brief dvar because we think it's really an important part of who we are at Hebrew College, and I welcome and invite Rabbi Green.
Thanks, Jim. Jim didn't say he's among my students these days. And it's great to look around and see some people here whom I'm used to seeing in very different contexts, so it's nice to welcome you and to welcome you all to Hebrew College, especially those for whom it's a first visit here. Welcome indeed. So as a person who's been involved in training rabbis for the last half century, more or less, dealing with the question of what is rabbinic education, what is rabbinic leadership, I think a lot about the questions of leadership. How do you train leadership? How do you train leaders? What is a leader? How do you become one? We don't get very much help from Jewish history in the recent past. For a long time, we ordained people as rabbis on the basis of esoteric knowledge and ability to carry on complicated Talmudic arguments around that body of knowledge. They were prepared to know the tradition. They were prepared to decide on points of law. They weren't well prepared to be leaders, to have the people skills, to have the vision, to have the qualities of leadership that we all know are important. But if we go farther back into the tradition, we go back to the beginning, the tale of ancient Israel as recorded in the Hebrew Bible, the whole story is about leadership. You can read the whole story of the Tanakh, the whole story of the Hebrew Bible, as competition between three groups of leaders: kings, priests, and prophets, and their different senses of where the people is going and how the people should be led. I won't say too much about kings, since they're mostly the whipping boys of the biblical tradition. Mostly it's both priests and prophets who are opposed to the arbitrary authority of kings, but I want to say a little bit about priest and prophet as models of leadership. Prophetic leadership is all about vision. You have a sense of where you're going. You have a sense of what you want to happen to the people, to the community, to the institution that you're leading. There's a broader goal and there's a specific goal. You might say the people should react such and such a way to the siege of Jerusalem about to happen. That's how we have to transform that community, transform their vision of this event. But there's also always a broader vision. The wolf shall lie down with the lamb is a universal vision. There's a sense of universal justice or universal quality that the prophet is trying to bring to bear to his particular situation. The priest is a leader more by dint of wanting to serve than by having a great vision. What are the people's needs? How can I respond to them? How do I care for them? Remember, priests in the ancient world were also healers. People went to the priest because he could exorcise the evil spirits that brought about disease, the evil spirits that had brought the enemy upon them. So therefore, serving people, serving people's needs, responding to what they want to hear is the priest's job. That sense of leadership, wanting to serve, and that sense of leadership, having a vision, wanting to transform, are two different models that exist in tandem with one another, in the Bible often in conflict with one another. Of course, you know those models of leadership. You know people who come into institutions with a great vision of wanting to change it, wanting to knowing where the institution should go, and people who feel that it's inherently conservative task. My job is to serve this community, to serve this institution, to serve these members. Our rabbinical students come in filled often with prophetic zeal. They want to change the world, they want to transform the Jewish community, or they want to serve. A lot of them are very much dedicated to the rabbinate as a career of service, of caring for people. They then encounter synagogue boards who want them to serve indeed, to serve them, to serve the board, to serve the board's wishes, to serve the members. After all, that's what you're hired for. You're here to serve this community and give it what it wants. And yet the rabbi knows he has to do something more than that, or she has to do something more than that. They have to take the community to a broader place. They have to take the community to a more open place. The conflict young rabbis often have, the member of the board says, you can't perform that funeral, you can't take care of that family. They're not members of our community. And I dare say in your world too, the question of whom you're serving. Are you serving your owners? Are you serving your boards? Are you serving customers? Are you serving the broader community? How does corporate leadership get into the question of service leadership, serving the world? So for that you need some kind of mixture of the priestly leadership and prophetic leadership models. Yes, you are there to serve, and servant leadership is very important. But servant leadership can sometimes become too narrow. People who want to say, yes, indeed, servant leadership, you're our servant, you're my servant. You're the servant of where I want to take this company. And for that, the servant leader has to temper that obedience. Remember, the priest, the high priest, Aaron, was the one who made the golden calf, while the prophet was busy up on the mountaintop. Priesthood alone without a dose of prophecy can be dangerous, can be perverted. Therefore, the priest leader always needs a dose of the prophet leader to come in with him and say, what's the grand vision? How am I caring for the people, caring for the needs of this community, corporation, institution, whatever it is, and at the same time being open to the grand vision of how we want the world to be, how we want to serve the broadest of constituencies of all, indeed serve the presence of God. So lessons from leadership, lessons from the Jewish tradition that I hope might have something to say to you as well. Again, good morning, welcome, great to see you all.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Rabbi Daniel Lehmann. I'm the president here at Hebrew College, and it's great to see you all here and to have you on our beautiful campus for this second of our CEO Forum events. And I want to give a shout out to Carl Chudnovsky because he had the idea of establishing the CEO Forum here at Hebrew College, and I was very skeptical as to whether we really had an opportunity to have an impact with executives, both for-profit and not-for-profit executives, and he was absolutely correct. We had our first one last spring with Aaron Ain from Kronos, and today we have a full house, as you can see, to speak with Steve Kaufer from TripAdvisor. So I want to welcome you, thank you all for coming, and the idea of this CEO Forum really is a reflection of Hebrew College's motto. I don't know if you noticed driving up to the campus, but on the banners outside it says, Jewish learning and leadership for a pluralistic world. Hebrew College really sees our mission as creating a nexus of Jewish learning, of deep Jewish knowledge, and Art Green is a great embodiment of that. But we want to make that Jewish learning something that's relevant for the pluralistic world in which we live. And notice, it's not just the Jewish world. The pluralistic world is that broader world, and that's why the CEO Forum really is, in many ways, an expression of our interest in bringing together Jewish wisdom and the challenges of leadership in this global world in which we live. So I'm very, very excited to be here with Steve. And as a brief introduction, Steve, as you know, is a co-founder of TripAdvisor, which is the world's largest travel website. Prior to TripAdvisor, which he co-founded in 2000, he was the co-founder and CEO of several other software companies. What's amazing to me is that someone who graduated from the other HC across the river in computer science could so quickly, take on this kind of corporate leadership. It's so rare for people from that side of the river to have leadership. But what's interesting, I think, in terms of Steve's case, is the meteoric rise of this company. And I can tell you from the brief conversations I've had with Steve on the phone, he's a really down-to-earth person. There's not a lot of shtick, and that's such a refreshing kind of disposition for someone like me who's interviewing him, and hopefully we'll have a conversation and invite all you to participate. There are cards and pencils on the table. In a few minutes after we get started, we'll collect them, and I'll select a few as part of our conversation with Steve. So Steve, welcome. It's great to have you at Hebrew College, and I really appreciate your willingness to spend some time with us this morning.
Well, thanks so much.
So here's how I want to start. I went on the internet this morning as a part of my 4:30 preparation and discovered that TripAdvisor has an enterprise value of over $11.5 billion. Now, I can tell you, as a rabbi, I don't exactly know what an enterprise value is. But my many years of rabbinic education and experience has taught me that 11.5 billion is a really big number. So here's what I'm interested in first, Steve. You started it in 2000, it's been 15 years. What are some of the foundational ideas that are at the center of TripAdvisor that have enabled it to go in those 15 years to such an incredible organization and corporate powerhouse? What are some of the ideas, and how have you managed that kind of growth, starting off, in a real startup mode?
That's a great question. So I think a lot of the fun about starting a company is finding that need, finding that challenge that's out there that, you might have an idea to solve. The challenge of taking that as a company and making it a successful company is figuring out how you can actually make money doing that. And so the internet brought along a whole host of companies that for a very small amount of money could get going. We raised in total a couple of $1 million, and we probably could have bootstrapped even further along if we needed to, because it just didn't cost a lot to buy a couple of machines, and if you're willing to donate your time, which we weren't in the beginning, but lots of companies do start that way, you can write something, you can create a website, and you can get off and going. The idea that we wanted was, hey, help people learn from this great information medium, the internet, how to have a better trip. Because as a traveler, I was really tired of opening up a brochure and basing my choice of where I was going to spend a couple of $100 a night on something that was old and highly biased. So idea, yeah, kind of dime a dozen. There are lots of great ideas out there. Taking that and turning it into the business, much harder. And to be very clear, we failed at it for the first year and a half. Tried to do it, built a website. It was pretty cool. You could come and you could read people's opinions, get the unbiased information about where you wanted to go, where to stay, what to do, but we didn't have a way to make money at it. And then, if you want me to talk about it, it's like, and there was that tipping point where the old way didn't work, we had to do something new, and we found out, we figured out a way that we could actually keep ourselves in business.
So let me ask you, since Hebrew College is very much centered around this concept of pluralism, when I think about TripAdvisor, which I use all the time, by the way, I actually see it as a pluralistic site, in the sense that when I read the reviews, I'm looking at a whole bunch of different perspectives, and I'm trying to figure out how do I think about this particular hotel or this particular travel experience in light of this kind of expanded sense of different views on it. And I'm wondering to what extent you think that kind of democratic notion that we're going to bring together these different ideas and not necessarily come down on one side or another. I mean, you can look at the kind of the assessments of people and get a sense for how it trends, but I'm wondering if that notion that we're going to bring together a variety of different assessments is a critical component of what makes it so successful.
Absolutely. I mean, no doubt about it. Some of you may remember the name Arthur Frommer, who pioneered the guidebook notion, Europe on $5 a day, long time ago, opened up certainly international travel, a lot of domestic travel, took away the fear factor because somebody else had gone there, this guy that had written a book that we could follow. Fast forward 20 years, I went to Europe and I picked a couple of guidebooks and wow, I thought they were terrible. They just had absolutely nothing to do with what I wanted to see and do. And maybe they were written by some older person that didn't know me, or maybe they were just out of date, didn't know, but was very unhappy with what I had compared to, oh my God, TripAdvisor is only 15 years old, and now you go, and it's darn hard to find any spot you can go to around the globe that doesn't have hundreds of reviews on every place you could stay, practically every restaurant, all the different things to do. And so now, arguably, we have a different problem of there's too much information there. I don't want to read 1,000 reviews. I'm going to shoot myself. So come on, help summarize all this information. And then the most frequent question I get is, can't you make it like just so that the people that are writing those reviews, I just want to read the reviews that are people like me. Like, yes, I want that too. But you won't tell me who you are and what you like, so I can't do that match.
Right.
But we're going from, the opinion of one expert to the opinion of many, to the opinion of your friends, because you can connect your Facebook account and see the reviews that your friends have written on the site. And we're still going forward aiming for the personalization of all that information, because we have so much. How can we help you find really what's going to make the perfect trip just for you?
Neat. So one of the things that's fascinated me about TripAdvisor is the various stages that you've led it through. So you had the startup phase, then you sold it to Expedia. Expedia spun it off. You've acquired all the other brands. So I'm curious, what was the most satisfying stage in that ongoing unfolding history, and what stage would you say from a leadership perspective has been most challenging? Because those are really distinct phases of the company's growth.
Ooh, tough one there. I think personally the most enjoyable phase was when I could kind of lean back my chair, talk to the developers, suggest something, and it would be changed within a couple of days on the site if we all thought it was a good idea. And that kind of really quick turnaround, it's like, wow, and that's just impossible to preserve as big as we are. We strive really, really hard to do things quickly, but wow, all hell breaks loose when I go into a product team and say, hey, what if we did that? Because I'm just asking what if, but of course I'm CEO, so people say, ooh, better drop everything and go do it. So yeah, that's been a piece of the change. We've always focused, or I've always focused as CEO, on growing the company. So once we hit that profitability, it was growth. And with that growth, whether we were an independent company or part of Expedia or not part of Expedia, actually didn't change very much of the company at all. And if you think about what we're trying to do to help our travelers have a better trip, yeah, the corporate infrastructure or overhead or other structure has very little bearing on that. Or at least that's the way we were able to keep it.
And I read somewhere about this, and I want to confirm it. Do you actually write reviews when you're traveling and post them?
Of course. I need to be able to. I can't say I write reviews on absolutely everything. And if the establishment owner knows who I am for any business reason, then I might not write a review, because the poor individual is scared to death that my review would count for a lot more than anyone else's, and it doesn't, to be perfectly clear. But yeah, I've written quite a few reviews.
So I read in the Times of Israel, doing preparation for this, and I was wondering if that might have been a little bit biased, but you said in an interview that among all of the places you've traveled, Jerusalem is one of your favorite, and I wanted to ask you whether that is accurate, and what about Jerusalem really captures your imagination?
Absolutely true. It is a favorite destination. I am definitely looking forward to going back. Haven't been there. Why? Because of the history. And I grew up in Southern California. Something of historical value might have been 100 years old. I migrated east. Here you got several hundred. I've certainly visited Europe. It's 500-800. And you go to Israel and it's measured in thousands. And that's just, to my mind, so cool.
I also read that you've been a member of a synagogue here in Newton. Most of your kids have been to Israel, some on birthright. I wanted to ask you, are there values that you derive from Jewish culture, from your religious background, from your upbringing in your family, that you could identify as influencing aspects of your particular leadership style and leadership focus?
Sure. I mean, I guess more from parents than the Jewish community in my growing up was the notion of, you play to win, but you play fair. And you should always be able to look back and say, hey, I dealt with other people, honestly, all of the personal and the business relationships. Your reputation is at stake, and you care about your reputation. I really do care about my reputation. In terms of, and you're part of a bigger world, yes, and it is your obligation, so said my parents, and I was young, I believed that must be the way it was to leave the world in a better place. And so I have done my best to instill that in my children. In the business, we had an opportunity while we were part of Expedia, before we had spun out, to be able to set up a charitable foundation. And so we're able to donate a percentage of our profits every year towards this. And, for an entrepreneur in the room starting a business, really, really cool idea to do it before you are very successful. Because at that point, it almost doesn't matter. It's a couple of percent. And then, Lord willing, you get really big, and hey, it's actually tens of millions of dollars. It's a lot of money. And, but it was just part of the company culture at that point. So no one expects it, and you're able to do something pretty cool.
Is there a particular approach that you've developed at TripAdvisor to charitable giving? Are there particular kinds of charities that you've identified as being most compelling for what impact you want to have on the world through charity, through philanthropy?
Great question. So, one of the things we do at TripAdvisor, if you've been on the site, we're probably running 20 or 30 different tests every single day. We're just always trying new stuff. And so when we came up with this notion of the TripAdvisor Charitable Foundation, it could be the kind of board of directors of the board of the foundation deciding what we want to do and then issuing RFPs to get grant applications and then donate the money. Well, I was looking to have a little bit more of a multiplicative effect on the employee population. So we tried something, and jury's still out a little bit, but we said the purpose of the foundation isn't for a specific type of grant. It's for the more general, anything that will help people less fortunate than ourselves. So it's people, and it's less fortunate than ourselves. None of the management team could come forward and say they need their Newton Little League field with new grass. That just wasn't going to cut it. So with that as a goal, anyone in the company, any employee in the company, could present a grant if they were personally involved in the cause. And it is meant to help instill a sense of philanthropy amongst the employee population, and maybe, one might crassly put it, help bribe individuals to get more involved in whatever charities is most interesting to them, and the carrot being, hey, and once you did that, you can apply for a $25,000 or $50,000 grant from the foundation with very few, if any, kind of strings attached. It doesn't meet is it helping people less fortunate than ourselves?
Great. So I'm going to take some questions now from you all in the audience. And the first thing I read was a note. If you could put your mic a little bit closer, it might help people hear a little bit.
We'll try that. How about?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So one question that I see here is, how does TripAdvisor make money?
Sure.
I mean, it's a great site, and I use it supposedly for free, but I guess not. So.
Well, we appreciate everyone using it. We doubly appreciate if you write a review, because it actually makes the site better for the next visitor. We have a lot of reviews now. We make money because so many people coming to the site are in travel planning mode. When they're in travel planning mode, they're getting close to buying a flight or a hotel or a vacation rental or a ticket to a museum, some of the stuff that we sell or our clients sell. So we make most of our money in hotels. You're picking the best hotel, you're going to Jerusalem, where do you want to go? We list every possible place you could stay. And when you read the reviews and you say, yes, that's the one for me, you might click off to a site like Expedia or Orbitz, or now on TripAdvisor. In many countries, you can actually say, let me book this on TripAdvisor. Either way, we make money, which is a portion of the commission on that hotel sale.
And do you consider TripAdvisor a big data company? Is that how you would kind of self-describe?
We certainly have a ton of data. I wouldn't say our genius is how we use that data and turn it into amazing insights. Other companies do that. We do a little bit of it in our personalization efforts. What's really impressive is that you can go to Jerusalem, you can look at your neighborhood, you can indicate what you want in the hotel and the price range, and there for your perusal is what the world says is good and bad about this property, qualifying you to say, that's where I want, and we're checking the price on that hotel from 10 different places. They're all the same, or here's different. You go pick which one you want to buy, and at that point, when you click off, we got paid a couple bucks or whatever.
And how do you make sure that the reviews are real, meaning they're coming from real people as opposed to, being sent by the hotels themselves?
A common question, and I'm the first to encourage my kids to do not believe everything you read on the internet. However, when you're looking at that hotel in Jerusalem, and it's got 1,500 reviews, how many of you, A, will read all 1,500? None. How many will be influenced by just one review versus getting the gestalt of the hotel? And we present to you in a kind of histogram form, here's how many people loved it, here's the couple that didn't like it, and we're giving you all that general information. So, we have a team of 100+ people dedicated to making sure no one can write fake reviews on our site. I can't say it never happens, but if you're in business to do that, we catch you. It's not a fun part of our business, but we're really, really good at it now.
Can you speak to what you think was the most significant tipping point for the company, where you really felt this is going to really take off and we're going to make a significant splash?
I think it had to be the moment, the tipping point was, hey, we're struggling along, we don't know how we're finally going to make money with this company, and we figured out if we put a link on the site, this was back in 2001, if we put a link on the site on that hotel page where you could read the reviews and you could click off to book that hotel at Expedia, that was kind of the money-making moment. I can see how we're not, literally, I can see how we're not going to go out of business next quarter. Very, very important. The second thing was, as we continue to grow, the pace of review collection just started to skyrocket. And one of our initial concerns was, who's really going to take time to write a review about their travel experience unless they had a horrible experience, right? People are careful about their time, and how inspiring of a travel site was this going to be if it was filled with horror stories? So we had a worry there. It turned out to be completely in our heads. People love sharing the great stories about their trip, and when we saw that kind of come to life, it's like, whew, clear sailing there. And it was clear sailing for quite a few years.
So I'm thinking now, maybe we need a Jewish life advisor. No, seriously, you have synagogues, you have various other kinds of Jewish organizations, and we'll review them. And because here's one question.
That's where we get into the hobbyist versus the business guy.
No, so I'm thinking about that because there's a question here about if you identify profitability and growth as key measures of success in a business, do you have any suggestions for religion that seems to be, in America, challenged by growth and profitability? And is there anything that we could kind of borrow from your experience or your sense of what has worked at TripAdvisor to help religious institutions be a more compelling option for people in the marketplace of their lives?
Oh, ask someone who's completely unqualified on that type of question. I'd give you the perspective that TripAdvisor over the years has had an astounding number of bad product ideas and bad product execution. We've had enough good ones to keep going, but part of what we build into the culture from early on is, look, you can try stuff and it's okay to just miss. Try not to try stuff that takes a year to produce. Try to keep it like a month or two. Give it a whirl. Our customers, our travelers to our website, tell us pretty quickly whether they like this new section or they don't. If they don't, take it down. If they do, consider expanding it. So as you look at a curriculum or events or things to pull in the Jewish community, what's the harm of trying some new stuff? To the point on the, hey, the board of directors says that's not something this temple should ever do. How about just a little test? Pretty please, a little test. See if it pulls in, and they won't all work. But if you have the approach of, well, look, I'm going to try 10, and if 3 work, that's a good ratio. Might be advice from business.
Great. So innovation as a new mantra for Jewish life, I think we can.
I'm sure
there's
there's not a shortage of ideas.
No, we do have ideas, and I think the question is having the courage to actually take risks in order to try them out and to get the feedback mechanisms necessary in order to assess whether, in fact, they're working. People are curious, what are the top 3 places you'd like to go that you haven't been to based on, seeing all those reviews?
I'm probably more of, I'm a nature explorer or history explorer. So I'm embarrassed to say there's a whole set of national parks in the U.S. that I've never been to that I stare at the pictures of, and I really love going, would love to go to. Other parts of, literally, as running a travel company, continents I have never been to. So the list goes on, and I actually have on my board the long list. So good, plenty more.
As a CEO, do you see it as a significant part of your role to mentor other leaders, both within your company and perhaps even more generally in other parts of the industry?
A fair question. I'd probably say no. Maybe I should more. I try to sort of give back to the community, but doing a really good job mentoring takes a lot of time. And I have my set of excuses with running a big company, bunch of kids, lots of things in life, and so I haven't set aside the time at this stage in my career to do a lot of teaching.
There's time for that, and I think people would learn a lot from your experience, but also from your way of articulating, what has been the basis of your success. How has Massachusetts been as a place to grow your business and to create a hub for worldwide travel reviews?
It's worked well for us. I'd say there's a lot of folks that ask me frequently, "Oh, don't you wish you were in Silicon Valley?" And I'm like, heck no, I really, really am glad I am not there. We have an office in San Francisco. We have an office in Palo Alto. Yes, there's a lot of buzz and activity going on there, but the talent you look to draw in for a company like what we have, the talent competition is fierce and just ridiculous in that part of the world right now. So I look at Boston with its universities, and we have an office near TD Garden, and we have our headquarters here, and again, offices all over the world, but most of the development is done here. Worked really, really, really well for us. Highly recommended. And as someone that grew up on the West Coast, I think it's a delightful place to live and raise a family. So 2 thumbs up. It works. Sounds like I'm on TV for the Boston Chamber or whatever, but no, I do believe it.
What are the most important issues or challenges that you see facing TripAdvisor, moving forward? Is it management? Is it issues? Is it corporate culture? Is it technical kind of areas that need to be explored?
The travel space that we're in is just super fast moving. There's this company called Airbnb, for instance. Has anyone heard of it? They didn't exist 6 years ago. Oh my goodness. And now look, and it's competitive to us in the vacation rental space, not really in the hotel space. And you look at Expedia having bought several other companies, and you look at TripAdvisor having evolved from pure advertising model to now booking on TripAdvisor. We'll find you the best rate and we'll process your transaction. And again, all in a short amount of time. And yeah, it just keeps me on my toes, keeps us on our toes. I love that. It's in part the answer to, hey, most founders that start a company and sell it can go off and do something else, do it again or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but this job is so cool. There's so many interesting things we're successful at and things we're not yet successful at in order to build the travel site that really everyone wants to go to for all of their travel needs.
And do you think about what is next for you beyond TripAdvisor? Is there some kind of idea or kind of setting you'd like to be operating in at some point in the future, when you get the itch to do something new?
7 or 8 years ago, I thought I would start the itch because we crossed that 500 employee mark, and that was all of a sudden going to be a big company. And at 3,000 people, I haven't got the itch yet, so I'm not sure what the upper bound is. I truly love the fact that we get to, we have the resources to invent kind of new ways that people will interact with travel on the road. We have a couple 100 million downloads of our app on your smartphone, so when you are in market, you can do something. And the something can be find something really cool nearby, or it can be something that no one has out in the marketplace yet, but we're in an awesome position to invent, to figure it out. Well, to me, that sounds more interesting than the startup with 3 people that has to go do that, but without the couple of 100 million downloads, without the 370 million people a month coming to the site. It's a huge playground within which to invent where we think travel should go.
And do you think about the double impact, meaning both the impact of profit and how you deliver to the shareholders at the same time, the opportunity for some kind of social impact? Is that balance something that you're thinking about as a CEO?
I think about it in my personal life. How much time do I spend at work versus the charitable board I'm on or might join or other activities. For me at work, it's a pretty clear balance in terms of we have our charitable foundation, check. We've done some other things on the site because we just thought it was the right thing to do. We have a Green Leaders program because we care about the environment, and we wanted hotels to be able to have a financial incentive to do better environmentally. And so we basically have a form a hotel can fill out, doesn't cost anything, and if they meet certain sort of green positive criteria, we give them an extra badge on the site, which hopefully draws more traffic to them, so they have more guests, so that they say, hey, I should replace some of these light bulbs, or I should do some of these recycling, because I'll get more guests from TripAdvisor. Like, won't try to convince you it's a good thing to do, we'll just show you where the dollars. And that seems to have worked a bit, and we're able to do that because we have so much traffic.
Yeah, that's powerful. How do you balance the more short-term expectations of stockholders as a publicly traded company, the quarterly returns, versus having a much longer term vision of what growth looks like and how you grow the company over, over a longer period of time? Because that seems to me to be a real tension in your kind of business.
It is a very common tension amongst public company CEOs. It's not a tension I feel, in part because when we first went public, we were already quite successful, a nice long track record. We were very profitable, so there wasn't a question of, hey, can your business model make money? We were already hundreds of millions of dollars. And out the get-go, I said, look, we're running the business for the long term. I'm not paying attention to quarterly results, period, full stop. And I think the investor community, maybe some did or didn't believe that in the beginning, but then they heard it over and over and over. I challenge you to find any earnings statement in our 4-year history where I haven't said that on the call. So folks got used to the notion that, look, we're running it for the long term and we'll make some short-term trade-offs as frequently as we want. By the way, that attracts the shareholders that believe in where we're going. And I take a fair amount of time to explain to our shareholders why this 3-year and 5-year picture looks really interesting, with some risks along the way. And if you believe that, I'd like you as a shareholder. If you don't, that's okay with me. And since we don't use our stock, or we haven't historically used our stock for big acquisitions, it doesn't actually matter much to me whether our stock is high or low. And I don't like to say that in an investor conference, or I was qualified.
Just between us, guys, just
between us. I qualified by saying I care a lot about the shareholder value over the long term, but we're building a company, we always have that. Are we maximizing what we can be in the future by making the investments? And that does come at short-term profit trade-offs as we invest in restaurants, in attractions, in rentals, in all these categories that we're public about. And I'd say we found a good set of shareholders. They're saying, yes, I like that because, for our revenue and profit, the company's worth a lot right now.
Great. So final question. I'm curious how you would characterize the corporate culture and what you think are some of the most critical elements that have contributed to your success. I think as a leader of an institution like Hebrew College, I think a lot about what the nature of the institutional culture is and what is going to be critical to growth and driving success.
So I'll give you the 5 things that I am fond of repeating in the halls of TripAdvisor that mostly answer your question, I think. Number 1, a phrase we called speed wins, which is just the habit of doing things quickly. Because you can take a really long time to get something done, or you can do a mostly good enough job quickly, and where do you fall? What's the most normal course? And it's the habit, of speed. Number 2, I should say all these phrases are borrowed from other people. There's nothing original here. Number 2, done is better than perfect. So, hey, we live in an internet world. We can make a change. It doesn't have to be perfect. We want to get it done so that we can move on to the next thing. And a lot of other companies I had been associated with took a really long time planning stuff. And maybe it worked for them, but it's not part of our culture. Number 3, the harder you work, the luckier you get. One of my favorite quotes. That one I tell my kids all the time.
Yeah, my father too.
And again, it's look, we try a whole bunch of stuff. We work really hard. A bunch of them won't work, but some of them work really, really well. And it's that constant application of effort that yields results enough of the time. Number 4, embrace change. So our business, like many businesses, has people in them who, even though things aren't okay, they like the status quo. And you bring up anything that's other than the status quo, and it's like, oh, how will that affect me? How is that going to be different? Well, you don't like the way it is. I know, but I don't like anything different than what I have. It's just very human nature. And so the notion of embracing change allows, this is something we should all strive for. Take it as an opportunity, run with it, as a final tenet, if you will, to the company.
Neat. Well, I want to thank you very, very much for sharing your insights and perspectives. It's been a wonderful conversation. I hope you all have enjoyed it. We have a small gift as a token of your being with us at Hebrew College, which you should feel free to use in your corporate offices, because maybe people will notice and think about Hebrew College.
Terrific, thank you.
And I want to thank all of you for coming. Really, it's a wonderful, wonderful show of support for Hebrew College, but more importantly, a gathering which allows you to network and to be a part of Hebrew College's broader family and part of the Jewish community. And we want to do this more, and so please be on the lookout for the next CEO Forum, and we have a whole bunch of wonderful events here, public events at Hebrew College, and we hope that you'll take brochures, our new annual report, and peruse, and please feel welcome, and we want to see you back here often and soon. So thank you very much for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Greg Stoller, one of our co-chairs, to close the morning's event.
Good morning. I'm Greg Stoller. Once again, I would like to thank all of our speakers, whether it be Rabbi Green, Mayor Warren, of course Steve Kaufer, and our own President Daniel Lehmann. With all of their preparation and real at 4:30 a.m., very impressive for this morning's program. Quick round of applause. I also want to give a huge heartfelt thank you to our entire Hebrew College team. Logistically, this room looked a lot different 2 or 3 days ago than it did here. A lot of time and effort has gone in, not only with our Hebrew College staff, but also our volunteers and our board members. So once again, thank you to all of you. It is clear that a sense of community, a sense of self, and a desire to not only be successful professionally, but also to give something back is a theme that we've heard repeatedly today. In that vein, also a thank you to all of you. We filled up the room. This was started by Carl, as you know, but this is an ongoing work in progress. We know how busy each of you is. We very much thank you for coming. We've tried to get you out by 9 a.m. As Daniel Lehmann said, we're looking forward to doing this again in the spring. Once again, thank you for coming. Thank you to Mr. Kaufer, and have a great day, everybody.